My name is Evan Harrington, but for the last 20 years, my wife's friends have simply called me him, or dear. I'm 72 years old, and on what should have been a night of quiet celebration, her gallery opening, the pinnacle of her social world, everything changed. My own wife, Leah, leaned into her circle of vultures in designer dresses, gestured toward me with her glass, and proclaimed me the very definition of average. A comfortable, forgettable man. The human equivalent of beige wallpaper. Their laughter wasn't just loud, it was a ritual of dismissal. What they never bothered to learn was that for a decade, while they discussed art as an investment, I'd been perfecting the ultimate investment as an art, a project so quiet I called it the silence. 2 weeks after that night, as they gathered for brunch, my name flashed across every financial screen on Wall Street. Not as a footnote, as the earthquake. I'm going to tell you what it's like to build a masterpiece in the dark, and what happens when you finally choose to turn on the light for the very people who preferred you blind. But before I begin, let me ask you, have you ever been underestimated? Truly, completely written off? Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. To this community of the overlooked, the late bloomers, the quiet ones, thank you. Your stories are why I'm finally telling mine. And if you're new here, do me a kindness, like subscribe and hit that bell. You're not just following a story, you're bearing witness to the fact that sometimes the most profound revenge is simply a life lived entirely on your own, secret terms. Now, let me tell you about the day the wallpaper learned to roar. The gallery was called Luminescence. Fitting, I suppose, for a place designed to make certain people shine while others fade into the background. Leah had worked on this opening for 18 months, curating emerging artists, courting collectors, building what she called her legacy. I was happy for her, genuinely. She'd always had an eye for beauty, for things that mattered to people who mattered. I wore the charcoal suit she'd picked out. Understated, she'd said, which I understood to mean, don't embarrass me by trying too hard. The space was pristine. White walls, geometric sculptures, ambient lighting that made everyone look 10 years younger and infinitely more important. Servers in black moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and tiny architectural food that tasted like air and cost like gold. I stood near a corner installation, something involving mirrors and copper wire, nursing sparkling water and watching Leah work the room. She was radiant, 68 years old and still the most elegant woman in any space she entered. Silver hair pulled back in a chignon, emerald dress that whispered money without screaming it. She moved through conversations like a conductor, orchestrating introductions, laughing at precisely the right moments. And then they arrived. Stella came first, of course. She always led the pack. Sharp cheekbones, sharper tongue, the kind of woman who weaponized compliments. Behind her, Eliza, blonde and breathless, married to Logan, the corporate attorney who everyone agreed was going places. Then Oliver, not a woman, Leah's younger brother, 59 and still acting like a fraternity president. He'd made his money in tech during the dot-com boom and never let anyone forget it. They descended on Leah like she was the sun, and they were planets desperate for her gravitational pull. "Darling, this is extraordinary," Stella said, kissing both of Leah's cheeks. "You've outdone yourself." "The Rothko knockoff is particularly inspired," Oliver added, gesturing toward a massive red canvas. "How much are they asking?" Leah laughed. "It's not a knockoff, Ollie. It's a conversation." They circled her, champagne in hand, discussing art, real estate, someone named Jonah who'd just closed a hedge fund deal in Manhattan. I stayed in my corner. I'd learned long ago that my role at these events was atmospheric, present but not participating. The husband, the plus one, the man who held coats and remembered where we parked. And I was fine with that, truly. I'd built a career as a software engineer, retired comfortably at 65, and spent my days doing what I loved, solving problems no one else cared about. I wasn't flashy, wasn't loud, I didn't need to be. But then Stella glanced over, noticed me, and smiled the way you smile at a dog you're about to pat condescendingly. "Leah," she said, just loud enough for the circle to hear, "does Evan even enjoy these things? He always looks so lost." The group turned. I felt their eyes like spotlights. Leah followed their gaze, and for just a second, a flicker so brief I almost missed it, I saw something in her face. Embarrassment? Impatience? Then she smiled. "Oh, Evan's fine," she said lightly. "Aren't you, darling?" I nodded. "I'm great. Beautiful work tonight, Leah." Eliza tilted her head, the way you do when you're pretending to care. "What do you do with your time these days, Evan, now that you're retired?" It was an innocent question. She didn't mean harm, but the way she asked it, like I was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve, made my chest tighten. "I keep busy," I said. "Little projects here and there." "Projects?" Oliver repeated, swirling his champagne. "Like what? Woodworking? Model trains?" The circle laughed. Not cruelly, just easily. The kind of laughter that comes when someone says something mildly amusing and you're already 3 glasses in. "Nothing that exciting," I said. "Just some programming work. Keeps the mind sharp." "Programming," Stella said, her voice dripping with faux fascination. "How wonderfully practical." And then Leah spoke. Not to me. About me. She turned to Stella, lowered her voice just enough that I had to strain to hear, and said, "Honestly, he's been tinkering with the same algorithm for years. I stopped asking about it because, well..." She trailed off, smiled. "Some people need hobbies, I suppose. Evan's comfortable with average. Not everyone needs to set the world on fire." Stella's eyes widened with delight. "Oh, Leah, you're terrible." "I'm honest," Leah corrected. "And honestly, I've made peace with it. He's steady, reliable, the human equivalent of beige." They laughed again, louder this time. Oliver actually snorted into his glass. I stood there, still holding my water, still smiling, still playing the part. But something inside me, something I'd kept carefully locked away, began to crack. Not with rage, not yet, with clarity. I wasn't angry at them for laughing. I was angry at myself for being surprised. I didn't sleep that night. Leah came home glowing, replaying highlights from the evening. Who bought what? Who promised to introduce her to a collector in Paris? She didn't mention the beige comment. Maybe she'd forgotten. Or maybe she assumed I hadn't heard. I didn't bring it up. The next morning, after she left for brunch with Stella and Eliza, I went to the garage. Our house in Greenwich was the kind of place that looked perfect in architectural magazines. White columns, slate roof, sprawling lawn maintained by people whose names Leah couldn't remember. The garage had 3 bays. 2 held her Mercedes and my aging Volvo. The 3rd bay was mine. I'd converted it years ago. Whiteboard walls covered in equations. 3 monitors, ergonomic chair, a mini fridge stocked with sparkling water and dark chocolate. This was where I disappeared, where I'd been disappearing for a decade. The silence. That's what I called it. Not because it was secret, though it was, but because that's what it required. Silence. Focus. The willingness to work on something no one believed in, including, apparently, my own wife. It was an AI-driven trading algorithm, not the kind hedge funds use to shave milliseconds off transactions. No, this was different. Predictive modeling combined with behavioral economics, machine learning that adapted in real time to market psychology. It didn't just analyze numbers, it analyzed fear, greed, human irrationality. I'd spent 40 years in software engineering, most of it at companies no one remembers. But I learned something those companies never valued. The best code isn't the flashiest. It's the code that works when everyone else's fails. For 10 years, I refined it, tested it against historical data, ran simulations, failed, adjusted, failed again. And slowly, excruciatingly slowly, it started to work. Not just work, Excel. I'd never told Leah the details. Early on, I'd tried, but her eyes glazed over when I talked about regression models and volatility indices. Eventually, I stopped trying. It became easier to let her think I was just tinkering. That morning, I sat in front of my screens and stared at the latest simulation results. 17 consecutive profitable quarters. Accuracy rate, 91.3%. If this were real money, I'd have turned $100,000 into $47 million, but it wasn't real. It was theoretical, because I'd been too afraid or too comfortable to actually launch it. Comfortable with average. Her words echoed. I opened my email and scrolled to a message I'd been ignoring for 3 months, from Jonah Reeves, an old MIT classmate who'd gone on to manage a hedge fund in Manhattan. We'd reconnected at a conference 2 years ago, and when I'd mentioned the silence in passing, he'd practically grabbed me by the shoulders. "Evan, if you're even half right about this, you're sitting on a nuclear weapon. Let me see it." I'd demurred, told him it wasn't ready, told him I needed more time. But that morning, staring at those numbers, I realized the truth. It wasn't the algorithm that wasn't ready. It was me. I opened a reply window and typed, "Jonah, still interested? I'm ready to talk." I hit send before I could change my mind. Then I went back to work. 3 days later, Leah came home early from a luncheon. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood as she made her way to the kitchen. I was at the table, reviewing notes, when she appeared in the doorway. "Evan, have you seen my reading glasses?" "Check the sunroom," I said without looking up. She didn't move. I felt her watching me. "You've been in that garage a lot lately," she said. Her tone was light, but there was an edge. "Same as always," I replied. "Stella asked about you at lunch." I glanced up. "Oh?" "She wanted to know what you're working on." I told her I didn't really know. She paused. "Because I don't." There it was, the unspoken accusation. "You shut me out. You disappear. You're obsessed with something I don't understand and can't share." I could have explained. Could have told her that Jonah was flying in next week to review the silence, that if he liked what he saw, everything could change. But I didn't. Because the night of the gallery opening, she hadn't just called me average. She'd called me comfortable with it, like I'd chosen mediocrity, like I was content to be wallpaper. And maybe, for a long time, I had been. But not anymore. "It's nothing important," I said, turning back to my notes. "Just a hobby." She stood there a moment longer, then sighed. "Well, don't forget, dinner with Oliver and his new girlfriend tomorrow. 7 o'clock. Try to be engaged." "I'll be there," I said. She left. I returned to the algorithm. And for the first time in 20 years of marriage, I realized something that made my hands shake as I typed. I didn't care if she understood. I didn't need her to. I was done being beige. Jonah arrived on a Tuesday morning in early October. I picked him up from Greenwich Station in my Volvo, the one with the fading paint and the check engine light that had been on for 3 years. He folded his 6'2" frame into the passenger seat, expensive briefcase on his lap, and grinned at me like we were still 25 and pulling all-nighters in the MIT computer lab. "Evan Harrington," he said, shaking his head. "You look exactly the same. How is that possible?" "Clean living," I said, "and a complete absence of ambition, according to my wife." He laughed, but I didn't. His smile faded. "You okay, man?" "Let's just say I'm ready to stop being invisible." We drove to the house. Leah had taken the train into Manhattan for a museum board meeting, something about funding for emerging sculptors. She wouldn't be back until evening. Perfect. I led Jonah through the side door, straight into the garage. When I flipped on the lights, his eyes went wide. "Jesus, Evan, you built a bunker." "I built a laboratory," I corrected. "Coffee?" "Show me the algorithm first, coffee later." For the next 4 hours, I walked him through it. Every layer, every decision tree, the neural networks that learned from market failures, The sentiment analysis that scraped millions of social media posts, news articles, earnings calls, feeding it all into a model that didn't just predict market movements. It anticipated human panic. Because that's what markets are, really. Just 7 billion people trying not to lose everything. Jonah sat in my chair, scrolling through code, running test simulations, his face shifting from skepticism to focus to something I hadn't seen in years. Genuine awe. "Run the 2008 simulation again," he said quietly. I did. The model predicted the crash 4 months before Lehman collapsed. Not just that it would happen, but how. Which sectors would bleed first? Where capital would flee? Jonah leaned back, ran both hands through his hair. "Evan, do you understand what you have here?" "I think so." "No, I don't think you do." He turned to face me, and his expression was dead serious. "This isn't just an algorithm. This is a goddamn oracle. If my fund had this in 2008, we'd have made $800 million while everyone else was jumping out windows." I felt something twist in my chest. Pride? Fear? Both? "So you think it's viable?" He laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "Viable?" "Evan, this is the most sophisticated predictive trading model I've ever seen. And I've seen everything. Renaissance Technologies? D.E. Shaw? They'd kill for this." He paused. "Why the hell have you been sitting on it?" I didn't answer right away. How do you explain a decade of doubt, of telling yourself it wasn't ready, when really you were just afraid to be wrong? Afraid to be laughed at by people who already thought you were small? "I guess I didn't think anyone would take me seriously," I said finally. Jonah stood up, walked over, and gripped my shoulder. "Listen to me. I'm taking you seriously. My partners will take you seriously. And if you let me, I'm going to make sure Wall Street takes you very seriously." "What are you proposing?" "A licensing deal. My fund gets exclusive access for 3 years. We pay you up front, plus a percentage of profits generated using the model. I'm talking high 7 figures to start, maybe 8, depending on how badly they want it." He paused. "And trust me, they'll want it." 7 figures. 8. I'd retired on a comfortable pension and decent savings. We lived well, but not extravagantly, and that was all Leah's family money paying for the house, the art, the life she'd built. I'd always been fine with that. I didn't need to be rich, but I needed to stop being invisible. "When can you pitch it?" I asked. "Friday. I'll set up a meeting with our chief investment officer, Evan." He smiled. "Pack a suit, a good one." That night, Leah came home exhausted. She kicked off her heels in the entryway, poured herself a glass of Sancerre, and collapsed on the couch. "How was your day?" she asked absently, scrolling through her phone. "Productive," I said. That's nice." She didn't look up. I almost told her. Almost said, "Leah, something's happening. Something big. I need you to see me." But then I remembered her voice at the gallery, the human equivalent of beige. "Dinner with Oliver tomorrow," she reminded me. "His new girlfriend's name is Stella. No, wait, that's my friend. God, I'm tired. Her name is... It doesn't matter. Just be pleasant." "Always am," I said. She finally looked at me, something unreadable in her expression. "Are you upset with me?" "Why would I be upset? You've been distant." I smiled, just focused on my little project. She waved a hand dismissively. "Right, your hobby." Then she stood, kissed my forehead like I was a child, and headed upstairs. "Don't stay up too late." I sat alone in the living room, staring at the abstract painting she'd paid $40,000 for last year. It was supposed to represent the chaos of modern existence. To me, it looked like someone had spilled paint and called it profound. But I understood something now. The chaos wasn't in the painting. It was in the fact that my own wife could kiss me goodnight and have no idea her entire world was about to shift. Friday came fast. I wore the navy suit Leah had bought me for her gallery opening, the one that made me look understated. I paired it with a tie Jonah had insisted I buy, bold, crimson, the kind that said, "I belong here." The train into Manhattan was crowded with the usual commuters, young analysts in cheap suits, middle-aged men staring at phones, women in sneakers carrying heels for the office. I used to be one of them. 30 years of commuting into the city, building software for companies that never put my name on anything. But today felt different. Today, I was bringing myself. Jonah's fund was headquartered in a glass tower in Midtown, 47th floor. The reception area had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture, and a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. "Mr. Harrington," she said warmly, "Mr. Reeves is expecting you. 10th conference room." Jonah met me at the elevator, grinning like a man who'd already won. "You ready?" "As I'll ever be." "Good, because they're very interested. I sent over the executive summary yesterday. The CIO called me at 11 p.m. He said, and I quote, 'If this is real, we're buying it.'" My pulse quickened. "And if they don't believe it's real? Then you're about to give the performance of your life." The conference room was all glass and steel. Seated at the long table were 4 people. Richard Stokes, the chief investment officer, 60, silver hair, the kind of man who made decisions worth billions before breakfast. Carla Mendez, head of quantitative strategies, sharp eyes, sharper questions, and 2 analysts whose names I immediately forgot. Jonah made introductions. I shook hands, sat down, opened my laptop, and then I did what I'd been preparing for a decade. I explained the silence, not in technical jargon, not in the language of code. I explained it the way you'd explain a heartbeat to someone who'd never noticed their own chest rising and falling. "Markets aren't rational," I began. "We pretend they are. We build models assuming people make logical choices. But they don't. They panic. They herd. They sell when they should buy and buy when they should run. This algorithm doesn't predict numbers. It predicts fear." I showed them the 2008 simulation, the 2020 COVID crash, the flash crash of 2010, every major market event in the last 20 years, retroactively analyzed with terrifying accuracy. Carla leaned forward. "You're saying this model would have predicted all of these?" "Not predicted, anticipated. 4 to 6 weeks in advance. Enough time to reposition, enough time to profit while others bled." Richard Stokes hadn't spoken yet. He sat back, fingers steepled, watching me like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "Mr. Harrington," he said finally, "why now? You've had this for how long?" 10 years. "And you've never monetized it. Never published. Never even filed a patent. Why?" I met his eyes. "Because I wasn't sure anyone would believe me." "And now?" I thought about Leah's laugh, about Stella's condescending smile, about 20 years of being called dear and him and the human equivalent of beige. "Now, I'm sure I don't care." Richard smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the smile of a shark recognizing another predator. "I believe you," he said, "and I want it." The offer came 2 hours later, $12 million up front, 15% of net profits for 3 years, exclusive licensing. Jonah walked me out of the building, both of us silent until we hit the street. Then he grabbed my shoulders and actually shook me. "Do you understand what just happened? 12 million, Evan. $12 million. I felt numb, dizzy, like I'd stepped off a ledge and was still waiting to hit the ground. "They believed me," I said quietly. "Of course they believed you. You just handed them a money printing machine." He paused. "What are you going to do first?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. All I knew was that somewhere in Greenwich my wife was probably having lunch with Stella, discussing art installations and vacation homes. And she had no idea that the man she'd called average, the man she'd dismissed in front of her friends, had just become worth more in a single morning than most people earned in a lifetime. I looked at Jonah. When do they want to announce this? Publicly? 2 weeks? They'll want to run internal tests first. But Evan... He grinned. Once this goes live, your name will be everywhere. Bloomberg, CNBC, Financial Times. You're going to be famous. Famous. The word felt foreign, dangerous, and absolutely, perfectly right. Let's do it, I said. We shook hands on the street corner, 47 floors below the room where I'd just changed my life. And as I rode the train back to Greenwich, I finally let myself smile. Not the polite smile I'd been wearing for 20 years, a real one. I didn't tell Leah about the deal. Not that weekend when she dragged me to Oliver's dinner party and I sat quietly while he bragged about his latest Tesla. Not the following Tuesday when she asked why I seemed distracted. Not even when she mentioned, casually over breakfast, that Stella had heard rumors about some old guy making waves in fintech. Probably another crypto scam, Leah had said, buttering her toast. These people never learn. I just nodded and sipped my coffee. The 2 weeks passed like I was watching my life from outside my body. Jonah called daily with updates. The fund's internal tests were flawless. Richard Stokes wanted to accelerate the public announcement. Bloomberg was already sniffing around asking questions about a mysterious algorithm that's got Wall Street buzzing. Are you ready for this? Jonah asked me on the phone 3 days before the launch. I was standing in the garage, staring at the whiteboard covered in 10 years of equations. My life's work, my silence about to become a roar. Yes, I said. I'm ready. The announcement went live on a Wednesday morning at 9:47 a.m. Bloomberg Terminal Alert. Stokes Capital Management licenses revolutionary AI trading model from independent developer Evan Harrington, 72. Early tests show unprecedented accuracy in predicting market volatility. Deal valued at 12,000 plus. Within an hour, it had spread everywhere. CNBC breaking news. Meet the 72-year-old retiree who just revolutionized trading. Financial Times. The algorithm Wall Street didn't see coming. Reuters, Evan Harrington, from Greenwich Garage to Goldman's radar. My phone started ringing at 10:15 a.m. Reporters, hedge fund managers, a producer from 60 Minutes. I let them all go to voicemail, because at 10:43 a.m. I got the only call I was waiting for. Leah. Evan. Her voice was tight, controlled. Where are you? Home, in the garage. I'm seeing something very strange on my phone. Multiple people have sent me links, articles, about you. I closed my eyes. I can explain. They're saying you sold an algorithm for $12 million. They're saying you've been building something for a decade. They're showing your face on financial news channels, Evan. Your face. Silence. Is this real? She whispered. Yes. And you didn't tell me. No. Why? I could have said a lot of things. I could have been diplomatic, gentle. The old Evan would have apologized, would have made it about her feelings, her shock, her understandable hurt. But I wasn't the old Evan anymore. Because you called me average, I said quietly, in front of your friends. You said I was comfortable with mediocrity. You laughed. Evan, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. And you know what? You were right to say it. I was average. I made myself small. I stayed quiet. I let you and Oliver and Stella treat me like furniture. But I'm not doing that anymore. I heard her breathing on the other end. Fast. Shallow. I'm coming home, she said. Don't go anywhere. We need to talk. She hung up. I stood in the garage, surrounded by the evidence of everything she'd never bothered to see, and I waited. Leah arrived 30 minutes later. I heard the Mercedes pull into the driveway too fast, heard her heels clicking double time across the walkway. She burst through the garage door, phone in hand, face flushed. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time, or maybe seeing me clearly for the first time in years. $12 million, she said. Not a question. A statement of disbelief. Up front, I confirmed, plus 15% of profits. The fund estimates that could be another 20 to 30 million over 3 years. She actually staggered, put her hand on the doorframe. Evan, why didn't you tell me? I tried, years ago. You weren't interested. That's not fair, isn't it? I turned to face her fully. When's the last time you asked me about my work? Really asked? Not just, how was your day, dear, while scrolling through Instagram. When's the last time you looked at me like I mattered? Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones. You matter to me. Do I? Because 2 weeks ago, you told a room full of people I was beige wallpaper. You said I was comfortable being forgettable. I was frustrated. I don't know, showing off for Stella. It was stupid. I'm sorry. You're sorry now, I said. Now that I'm worth something. Now that your friends are calling you, asking how you landed a genius. But when I was just Evan, just your average husband in the garage, I was an embarrassment. That's not true. Stop. My voice was calm, cold. Just stop, Leah. I've spent 20 years listening to you rewrite history, making excuses. But I heard you. I heard exactly what you think of me. And you know what the worst part is? She waited, mascara starting to run. I almost believed you. She tried to touch my arm. I stepped back. Evan, please, we can fix this. We're a team. We've been married for 33 years. And for how many of those years have you actually seen me? She had no answer. My phone buzzed. A text from Jonah. CNBC wants you live tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. You in? I looked at Leah, at the woman I'd loved since I was 39 years old, the woman who'd stopped looking at me sometime around year 15 and never bothered to look back. I'm doing a live interview tomorrow, I said. CNBC. They want to talk about the algorithm, about the journey, about what it's like to build something in silence. Evan, that's wonderful. I'll come with you. We can… No. She froze. This is mine, Leah. My story. My work. You don't get to be part of it just because now it's valuable. I'm your wife. Are you? I asked, and for the first time in 33 years, I saw her flinch like I'd struck her. I picked up my laptop, walked past her toward the door. Where are you going? She asked, voice breaking. Manhattan. I have meetings. And Leah? I paused at the doorway. When I get back, we need to have a real conversation about what comes next, for both of us. I left her standing in the garage, surrounded by 10 years of work she'd never cared to understand. And I didn't look back. The CNBC interview aired at 7:08 a.m. I sat across from Rebecca Torres in a studio in Midtown Manhattan. Bright lights, 3 cameras, a Chiron at the bottom of the screen. Evan Harrington, creator of The Silence Algorithm. Mr. Harrington, Rebecca began, until last week, almost no one knew your name. How does a 72-year-old retiree build something this groundbreaking in total obscurity? I smiled. You work in silence. You ignore the noise. And you stop caring what people think. But surely you had support. Family. I paused. The old Evan would have lied. Would have said something gracious about partnership. But the cameras were rolling. And I was done being invisible. No, I said simply. I built this alone. Because the people closest to me didn't believe it was worth building. They thought I was wasting my time. Being average. Rebecca leaned forward. And now? Now they know better. The interview went viral within hours. By noon, my phone had 247 missed calls, and 1 text from Leah. I'm watching. You're amazing. I'm so sorry, Evan. Please come home. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I turned off my phone. That evening, I met Jonah at a steakhouse in Manhattan. He was already 3 drinks in, grinning like he'd won the lottery. You're a rock star, he said, shaking his head. Do you know Goldman called? They want to meet. J.P. Morgan, too. Everyone wants a piece of the silence. Let them wait, I said. Evan, you're enjoying this. I am. And I was. Not the money, not the fame, but the fact that for the first time in decades I wasn't apologizing for existing. "So what's next?" Jonah asked. "Bigger deals? Speaking tours? You could write a book." "Actually," I said, "I'm thinking about starting a fund. For people like me, the overlooked ones, the garage tinkerers no one takes seriously." Jonah raised his glass. "Now that's revenge." "No," I corrected, "that's justice." I returned to Greenwich late that night. The house was dark except for one light in the living room. Leah was waiting, sitting on the couch in her robe, hands folded in her lap like she was in a doctor's waiting room. "I didn't think you'd come back," she said quietly. "I live here." "For how long?" I sat down across from her, not next to her, across. "I don't know yet." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Stella called. 6 times. Eliza too. They wanted to apologize, to congratulate me, as if I had anything to do with it." "You didn't." "I know." Her voice cracked. "Evan, I've been a terrible wife. I see that now. I took you for granted. I made you feel small. And I'm so sorry." I looked at her. Really looked. At the woman I'd spent 33 years loving. And I felt sadness. Not anger, not hatred, just profound sadness for what we'd become. "I believe you," I said. "I believe you're sorry. But Leah, I need you to understand something. I didn't do this to hurt you. I didn't build the silence to prove you wrong or make you feel bad. I did it because I needed to prove something to myself." "What?" "That I was never average. I just loved someone who needed me to be." She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Real, body-shaking sobs. I stood up, walked to the window overlooking the lawn I'd mowed for 20 years. "I'm moving to Manhattan," I said. "Jonah and I are starting a venture capital firm. I'm going to help people who've been told they're not good enough, not smart enough, too old, too average." "Are you divorcing me?" she whispered. I turned to face her. "I don't know. Maybe. Maybe we can find a way forward. But Leah, it won't be the same. I'm not the same. I can't be." "I don't want you to be," she said, standing. "I want to know the real you, the brilliant, incredible man I was too blind to see." "Then you're going to have to earn that," I said gently, "because I'm done making myself small for anyone." 6 months later, I'm sitting in my loft in Manhattan, looking out over the city I once commuted to as a nobody. Harrington & Co. just funded its 5th startup, a 68-year-old woman with a revolutionary water purification system. She reminded me of myself. Brilliant, ignored, tired of waiting for permission. Leah and I are separated. Not divorced. We talk once a week. She's in therapy. Says she's working on herself. I believe her. But I'm not waiting around to see if she changes. I'm too busy building the life I should have claimed decades ago. Stella stopped calling. So did Oliver. Eliza sent me a LinkedIn request. I ignored it. Last week, I got an email from a 71-year-old man in Ohio. He'd seen my interview. Said he'd been working on an invention in his basement for 15 years. Said his family thought he was wasting his time. "But you made me believe again," he wrote. "If you could do it, maybe I can too." I funded him. Because here's what I learned. Revenge isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. It's about building something so undeniable that their opinions become irrelevant. It's about reclaiming your voice, your worth, your life. I'm 72 years old. For 20 years, I was wallpaper. But wallpaper, it turns out, was just the disguise. Underneath, I was always a masterpiece. I just needed to stop letting other people hold the frame. So that's my story. The night I was called average, the decade I spent proving I wasn't, and the moment I realized that the only person's opinion that ever mattered was mine. If you've ever been underestimated, if someone ever made you feel small, forgettable, not good enough, I want you to know something. They were wrong, and it's never too late to prove it. But here's what I need from you right now. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own life, your own dreams you've been too afraid to chase, hit that subscribe button. Right now. Don't wait. Smash that like button if you believe it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. Hit the notification bell because I'm going to keep telling stories like this. Stories about people who refuse to stay invisible. And, most importantly, comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what dream you've been too afraid to chase. Tell me who underestimated you. Because every single one of you has a story worth telling. And maybe, just maybe, yours is next. Don't let this be where your story ends. Subscribe now. Join this community of late bloomers, quiet fighters, and people who refuse to be average. Because the world needs to hear your roar. Subscribe. Like, comment below. Welcome to the community of people who stopped being wallpaper. Welcome home.